Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Design Services for Central Valley Station's pre-bid. My name is Alice Rodriguez. I'm the Deputy Director of External Affairs for the California High-Speed Rail Authority. So let me go over a few things before we get started and jump into the program. One, I wanted to kind of go over the schedule that we'll be presenting today. From 11 to 12, right now we'll be doing what we consider, the pre-bid. We're going to take a break from 12 to 1. And then the small business team is going to host a small business workshop from 1 to 2:30. It will be an informational workshop, lots of small business. You can have a Q&A. There'll be a discussion of compliance, certification, all of that. And you can access that through the small business workshop via the same Zoom link. So if you drop off during the break, you can just jump right back on again at 1 o'clock. Next slide, please. Okay, so for this program, Brian Annis, our Chief Financial Officer, is going to go over a few project overview slides. Ashley Missler, our Small Business Advocate, will give a small business program overview. That's just a few slides. Again, there'll be more information in the workshop at 1 o'clock. Then there will be the Procurement Overview given by Meg Cedoroff, our Director of Planning and Sustainability. And then Attorney Lisa Crowfoot, will be giving an organizational conflict of interest policy overview. Next slide, please. Okay, so I know the most important thing is to get access to these resources and information. You can do that in lots of different ways. The Design Services for Central Valley Station's webpage is a great source of information. There is a link there, but it is very easy to find on our homepage. You just select Business Opportunities and then Design Services for Central Valley Stations. There we will include a presentation, this PowerPoint presentation, the video that we're recording right now, and the event registration list. And more information is available at the California State Contracts Register event webpage, which is listed there. And that will include responses to questions and any RFQ updates. And if you have any questions related to the procurement, you can send those to capitalprocurement@hsr.ca.gov. And those questions are going to be due by Thursday, May 19th. Next slide, please. Okay, so how to ask a question. There is no Q&A portion of this presentation for the pre-bid. However, you can submit questions to capitalprocurement@hsr.ca.gov. If you have questions directly related to the small business program, if you email sbadvocate@hsr.ca.gov, they can get you answers. And then for organizational conflict of interest questions, legal@hsr.ca.gov is your avenue there. Next slide, please. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Brian Annis.
Great. Thank you, Alice. And I'm going to go over the project at a high level for those of you that may not be familiar with the project. If we go to the next slide. So the authority has a mission in state law, and that is to initiate construction of a high-speed train system that utilizes an alignment and technology capable of sustained speeds of 200 miles per hour or greater. And I'll drill down a bit more on that as we go. To achieve that mission, we're guided by three principles that are listed here. We do want to initiate high-speed rail service for passengers as soon as possible. We also, in areas outside of early service, we want to make strategic concurrent investments that will provide mobility and economic enhancements and environmental benefits at the earliest possible time. In some cases, that may be investments in shared corridors, because in the north and south, we will be on shared corridors with Caltrain in the north and Metrolink in the south. So some of the early investments can benefit passenger riders in the short term on those commuter services and in the long term on high-speed rail. And lastly, we want to position ourselves to construct additional segments of high-speed rail as funding becomes available. So we are an entity in state government. We're part of the State Transportation Agency. We have a public board that governs the authority, and we report up to the Secretary of Transportation, who's in the governor's cabinet. The next slide. So this gives, on this slide, I'll focus on the map a bit. The map on the right here shows the full build out of California high-speed rail. And you'll note some of the lines are in blue. The line in blue that starts in San Francisco runs south and then east into the Central Valley, finally into Los Angeles and Anaheim. That is the phase 1 corridor, and that's has been prioritized in the State Bond Act, where voters approved about $9 billion for this project. The direction there is to focus on the phase 1 as a first priority, but ultimately, phase 2 is the extensions you see in yellow from Merced to Sacramento, and from Los Angeles east to the Inland Empire, and then south to San Diego. And that would be an additional 300 miles of high-speed rail. Along this alignment are 24 stations, which are the white circles in the alignment. And we have 5 of those stations in the Central Valley. You'll notice Merced, Madera, Fresno, Kings Tulare, and Bakersfield. And next slide. So I wanted to talk about progress here, and we have made very significant progress. And I'll say it's apparent, but you need to know where to look. And one area to look is environmental clearance. To begin construction on the 119 miles in the Central Valley between Madera and Poplar Avenue, which you see on the map here, we had to clear that environmental segment, which was done, I think, about 7 years ago. But since then, we've made progress, and everything in yellow on the map represents an environmentally cleared segment. So we have cleared 380 miles environmentally. And a lot of this has been in very recent times. In fact, we just environmentally cleared the San Jose to Merced segment at our board meeting on April 27th. So this represents a huge effort, really the authority working closely with communities to understand how we best align the project, preferred alignments, mitigations for community, and the team's done a great job here at incorporating community issues and coming to the board with alternatives that have generally been well received in the communities and by our board. We do have, as the map will show here, about 3 segments that remain for environmental clearance, and I'll talk a little more on a later slide about when we'll be completing those segments. Next slide, please. So this slide, another map you see on the right, this is really a slide to illustrate how we're building high-speed rail in multiple places at the same time, and really trying to advance the overall system in many, many ways. The prior slide, of course, we focused on some of the environmental clearance completion. Here we'll note that we do have 119 miles under construction today in the Central Valley between Madera and a point about 19 miles north of Bakersfield. That is more than halfway done. We have 3 civil packages that are constructing this 119 miles of guideway. And within that, there's about 93 major structures, such as bridges, viaducts, trenches that are being built along that 119 miles. But our construction work and our effort actually goes beyond the Central Valley. If you look to the north, you'll see a 51-mile segment identified San Francisco to San Jose, and that is the shared corridor with Caltrain. And we were able to be a major funder for the Caltrain electrification project. And the reason for that is we will use that same electrified infrastructure on that segment and share track with Caltrain. So that is really an additional 51 miles that are being readied for high-speed service, be used in the short term by Caltrain trains and in the long term by both Caltrain and high-speed rail trains. Further to the south, I wanted to point out You'll note a little bit of a cone, orange cone there down between LA and Anaheim. That's a major grade separation project where the freight rail currently crosses two major streets at Rosecrans and Marquardt in Southern California. That's one of the most dangerous grade crossings in California, and we're funding the separation of that such that the roadway will be separated from the freight rail, and we will be building our high-speed rail tracks adjacent to the freight rail as well. So that's an early high-speed rail investment down there. And last month, our board approved a project management agreement to direct about $423 million to the Los Angeles Union Station project. There, it's currently a stub station, meaning trains come in and leave in one way only. And that project will involve building a viaduct over Highway 101, so that can become a run-through track station. And that'll greatly increase capacity at LA Union Station to benefit Metrolink and Amtrak in the short term, but also create new capacity at that station for future high-speed rail trains. Last thing to mention on this slide, if you note going east-west near the bottom of the map, we also display the Brightline West private high-speed rail project. That is, you may know, run by a company that currently runs a train service in South Florida. And they have bought that project, and it's being some environmental updates they're working on. But the link there is to Las Vegas, and their plan is to get to Victorville and then split in two ways. One link to Palmdale, where they would share a station with us. And then they also want to go south to Rancho Cucamonga, where they would connect to Metrolink trains. But that's a project we're cooperating on. We have an MOU with Brightline, so we're coordinating there so passengers can have a seamless trip to Las Vegas if they want, and likewise some of those passengers coming in from Las Vegas can choose to reach Northern California destinations on California high-speed rail infrastructure. Next slide. So as I mentioned, significant progress on the project, both in structures that are complete or under construction in the Central Valley, and that has led to significant jobs. We have, over the course of the project, deployed over 7,800 construction workers, and that's a cumulative total. But any given day, we're averaging right now a little bit over 1,000 construction workers deployed to construction sites in the Central Valley, and have about 34 active sites up and down that 119-mile corridor. We employ about 699 small businesses, and of those, 224 are disadvantaged business enterprises and 79 are disabled veteran enterprises. Another aspect of our project is we're zero emissions, not only in train operations, but also our board has committed to buy only a clean power that's generated with zero emissions as well. When our system's up and running, a full phase one system, we would reduce vehicle miles traveled, and the equivalent of taking about 400,000 cars off the road annually, and that's where we see a greenhouse gas reduction benefit for climate impact. Next slide. I mentioned the environmental approvals. We have completed really 5 of 8 major environmental segments, with 3 left to go. The San Francisco to San Jose, we expect to complete that in the 3rd quarter of this year. And then the remaining 2 Southern California segments, Burbank to Palmdale and LA to Anaheim, we expect in 2023. Next slide. This slide gives you a little more detail on the construction work in the Central Valley in terms of how we've organized it. We have 3 construction packages, 3 different construction consortia that are working on these different segments. The furthest north one is called Construction Package 1, and that segment covers from Madera to a point south of Fresno. That was the first package entered into. The next package, Construction Package 2-3, is our longest segment from south of Fresno down to 1 mile north of the Kern County line. And then lastly, Construction Package 4 is a 22-mile segment at the south end, ending at Poplar Avenue, just north of the town of Shafter. And we're making good progress on all 3 segments. Again, there's 93 major structures being built across this full alignment. Construction Package 4 is the most advanced, and we expect to complete the civil work on that package in less than a year. We're targeting March of 23 to finish that civil construction, and Construction Package 2, 3, and 1 would be completed between 23 and 25. Next step, once civil construction is complete, is to put a track and systems and electrification on this alignment, and that's a additional contract that's currently out for procurement. I might note on this slide again, this particular slide denotes 4 stations. It doesn't happen to show the one further north, which is in Merced, but again, you'll note the Madera Station, downtown Fresno Station, Kings Tulare Regional Station in Hanford, and lastly, the downtown Bakersfield Station at F Street. Next slide. So what's ahead? Well, very exciting time for the authority, not only in what we're building and what we're clearing environmentally, but also a real re-engagement we've seen from the federal government. When the Biden administration came in, they, in fairly short order, restored a Obama administration grant that the Trump administration had deobligated, and that was about a $900 million grant from 2010. So that was very good news to have federal support again. And additionally, last year they awarded a $24 million raise grant to this project. So we're very grateful for the support of the Biden administration. And of course, the big deal going forward is the bipartisan infrastructure law, which sets aside tens of billions of dollars across multiple programs for which the authority is eligible to apply for. So we're going to come in with a large ask of the federal government to, as they have been a funding partner on the 119-mile segment, also be a funding partner as we extend our construction north to Merced and south to Bakersfield, and then run high-speed passenger train service on that Merced to Bakersfield segment, which is our early operating segment. So we will be going forward with multiple federal grant applications in the coming couple of years to help advance our program. And of course, the stations are key to that as well, as we're excited to be working toward that passenger service between Merced to Bakersfield and want the stations to be ready to receive those passengers. Longer term, we do want to extend beyond the Central Valley to the Bay Area, and we think the federal grants can also be helpful to us in advancing design on segments outside the Central Valley where we've completed the environmental clearance, and also doing some early shared corridor investments where those can help build infrastructure early that'll benefit those existing commuter services now, and also ready the corridor for future high-speed rail. So that concludes my overview of the project, and I'll hand it back to Alice. Thank you, Alice.
Thank you, Brian. Great program overview. Okay, next slide, I think we'll be introducing Ashley Missler, who will go over a small business program overview. Ashley, take it away.
Hi, thank you, Alice. Good morning, everyone. I am Ashley Missler, and I oversee the small business program and will be your point of contact for all your small business needs. My contact information is listed on this slide. Next slide, please. So, as many of you are aware, the authority has a 30% overall small business goal, where 10 of that is for disadvantaged business enterprises and 3% of that is for disabled veteran business enterprise. We already have a good number of businesses that are performing on the contract, a total of 699 you'll see that on this picture that come from all over the state. It designates essentially where they're located. And then we have approximately 19 small businesses that are outside of the state. So in order for you to meet your goal and in accordance with the small business program, you will need to designate a small business officer that will be responsible for being the point of contacts for all things related to small business. That person will essentially work closely with my team. For example, if there's a need for you to host a workshop or you'd like to garner interest for any procurements you're putting out or any task orders that needs done, they could work closely with my team to accomplish those goals. It is very important that you follow protocol for adding small businesses to your project that are using small businesses and that you're using small businesses that have been approved for the project. If you are looking for more businesses to do work on the project, you can also leverage my team and they'll be happy to partner with you to do workshops and try to help you find qualified businesses to perform on the contract. Next slide, please. Okay, so the authority is not a certifying agency. We actually partner with a couple different agencies to utilize their certification designations, as you'll see listed on this slide. Anytime you want to bring a business on board, they have to be certified with these departments here, and their certifications must be current and valid. You will want to make sure that throughout the time your small businesses are performing on their contract, that these certifications are continuously up to date. Most of these certifications here carry about 1 to 2 year term before they need to renew, but it's their responsibilities to make sure that their certifications are current. So, for example, the California Department of General Services offers a small business certification, a micro business certification, and the new small business public works, which includes firms who specifically work on public work projects. These are generally larger firms that have graduated out of the smaller business program. So if you have firms that have worked on the project in the past that grew and are no longer qualified as small businesses, they may qualify as a small business public work. That certification actually goes up to 36 million gross annual receipts, and they can still qualify as a small business. Lastly, I want to mention that DGS offers the Dbe Certification. The California Unified Certification Program is a disadvantaged enterprise program that is offered throughout California. And primarily Caltrans offers the certification statewide, but there are other agencies that also offer the certification. This statewide certification is actually basically self-certified, so you can probably get that in a day or so, but the CUPC takes longer. So if you have any firms that are trying to join your team with this certification, please let them know it takes about 6 months or so to get fully certified. Then we also accept the 8A Disadvantaged Business Program Certification, and that comes from the U.S. Small Business Certification. We don't have a lot of these types on the projects. It's also a pretty lengthy process to get them certified, about a year. So really anything federally that's federally certified takes quite some time. But these are the only certifications on this slide that you'll see that we accept, and they do have to be certified at the time they're brought onto the contract and during execution and throughout the term of the contract. Next slide, please. Okay, so this slide's regarding exclusivity. The authority has no prohibition against sub-consultants or subcontractors being exclusive to one offer, but we do strongly discourage this practice. Again, for small businesses, disabled DBEs, DBBEs, sub-consultants, or subcontractors. Next slide, please. Thank you. This slide covers our vendor registry. We encourage all businesses to register with Connect HSR. It's free, it's online, simple, and very simple to complete. If you send your businesses to this site to register, they will always be notified with opportunities and workshops on the projects. oftentimes we see that businesses are struggling with certain things. So we'll hold events and have guest appearances from Department of Industrial Relations to do, for instance, a workshop on certified payroll, or we might host a workshop with DGS. There are all kinds of opportunities to bring your business on the project and learn about HSR and how we do business. And then also just industry information is going to be listed on this website. So we encourage businesses to join and register just to stay up to date with everything going on. If you need more information on getting registered, I would definitely encourage you to attend the small business workshop beginning at 1 p.m. today using the same Zoom link from today's invite. So this concludes my presentation. Thank you for your time. If you have any questions for the program, please use the email that was provided at the beginning of this presentation. Thank you.
Thanks, Ashley. And we'll be repeating the email addresses again at the end. So if you missed it at the beginning, you'll catch it again at the end. All right. I believe Meg is up next. Meg is going to give us a procurement overview.
Thank you. I'm Meg Cedarath. I'm the Director of Planning and Sustainability for the High Speed Rail Authority, and the delivery of the stations is part of my team's core mission, and we coordinate closely with all of the functional areas in the authority. Next slide. So I'm going to run through today kind of an overview of the contract and the details of the RFQ, and we'll move on to the next slide. So functional passenger stations that are scaled to meet the ridership demand of high-speed rail's Merced to Bakersfield initial operating segment must be designed, constructed, commissioned, and made ready for customer service. The authority's board of directors approved the issuance of a request for qualifications for design services for the Central Valley stations last month. Upon this approval, staff issued an architectural and engineering procurement seeking to contract for comprehensive design services to progress the 4 Central Valley stations to facilities that are ready for operation. The RFQ process will qualify an offeror who can perform the entire scope of work, but the contract will be broken into 2 notices to proceed conforming to authorized funding. As you can see, the first notice to proceed will progress design work for all 4 stations to configuration footprint and will include such services that I'll go over in detail in the rest of this presentation, but loosely speaking, value engineering, cost refinements, materials and physical scope refinements, right-of-way confirmation, and utility relocation requirements. And a second NTP will be issued for the remaining design services through completed commissioned facilities ready for customer operation for all 4 stations. Quality of design, engineering excellence, and sustainability are of paramount importance to the authority. Next slide. I just want to talk a little bit about where these stations are. So on the next slide, you'll see a map. The 4 high-speed rail stations, as our CFO, Brian Annis, alluded to, are on the initial operating segment between Merced and Bakersfield and include Merced, Fresno, Kings Tulare, and Bakersfield. These stations have been included in the business model for high-speed rail since its inception. Stations are, of course, the access point for customers to access the high-speed rail station or the high-speed rail system. Each of these stations has been environmentally cleared through both CEQA and NEPA, as I'll start showing you on these next few slides. So next slide. These are going to be illustrating the station context and existing boundaries. What I'd like to emphasize is that each station will utilize an authority-provided station concept that shall be site adapted to the specific trackway and configuration as noted in the RFQ. The selected designer will take on and advance in detail a key part of the authority's existing design vision, specifically the canopy design concept that was completed in 2019. Adapting the concept to each site involves thoughtfulness of design to meet a range of configuration types. Let's go to the next slide and you'll see the illustration in Merced. We will likely have this designer adapt the aerial station prototype and pedestrian overcrossing to the proposed viaduct structure upon completion of a consideration and study of relocating the station to a new location within the city of Merced. On the next slide in Fresno, you'll see the station is located in the middle of downtown Fresno and really provides a bridge between downtown Fresno and the Chinatown community. The designer will adapt the at-grade station prototype and the pedestrian bridge into the existing trackways. The next slide. You'll see this is an illustration of the canopy concept in the Fresno situation, including some of the some elements that have been designed by others that speak to some of the pickup and drop off or site level concepts. Next slide. In Kings Tulare, this designer will be working, and what I would like to emphasize is that given some of the environmental actions were earlier in project delivery, sometimes a decade ago, in the intervening years, changes in the local context or resolution of agreements with local jurisdictions require additional refinement in the siting of station access facilities. And this is work that will be carried out by the selected designer. There are still many site issues that need to be resolved through this design process. For example, here in Kings Tulare, the station platforms and site must be connected to the existing State Route 43 roundabout and a relocated Lacey Boulevard. As you'll see in the next slide, the designer will be adapting the aerial station prototype into an existing viaduct structure that will be built by others. On the next slide, in Bakersfield, site access improvements likely include modifications to Chester Avenue, Garces Circle, and State Route 204 from the Kern Canal Bridge to Garces Circle. And in Bakersfield, facilitating safe, comfortable bicycle, pedestrian, and other active transportation access to the sites, well, to all of the sites is critical, but presents some challenges in Bakersfield. You'll see on the next slide, the designer will be also adapting the station prototype, the aerial station prototype, into the proposed viaduct structure illustrated here. Let's go to the next slide. And I'd like to speak a little bit about the structure of the contract and the scope of work. So next slide. The RFQ process will qualify firms for comprehensive design services. That is all of the critical services necessary to deliver functional facilities. The activities that the selected contractor will perform are a logical set of industry design services, including contract administration and project management, pre-design and planning services, which include preliminary design concepts and associated cost estimates and schedules, design services, from schematic design development through 50, 100% regulatory approvals and ready to bid documents. And these are all, of course, broken into, as you understand, increasingly detailed stages of design that will be managed through task orders by each station. But we also include bid support, construction administration support, and commissioning support. We've proposed a logical set of activities that follow a sequence to meet the project schedule of customer service by the end of this decade. Next slide. Procuring a design consultant is a key part of station delivery. And the selected designer's work is crucial to helping answer the authority's core questions about the extent and design details of the station facilities and the entire station site layout. The authority structured the delivery method for the Central Valley stations, a design, bid, build, delivery, to conform to our stage delivery process that governs all projects within the authority's program. As shown in this diagram, the design, bid, build, delivery method maintains the same series of milestones, technical analyses, and deliverables that provide the authority with critical information at each stage of delivery. While these are distinct facilities, stations, they are a piece of a larger complex system that must meet functional requirements and be quality assured so that these function to authority requirements. This RFQ provides details of the authority's program management, systems engineering, and quality requirements. Next slide. So rail stations are not a new animal in the United States, but high-speed rail stations are special. As you've no doubt read, and as you saw in our CFO's presentation, the authority is, just like Spain, France, Germany, the United Kingdom, and elsewhere, we are building the system out in phases. The first phase, referred to as the initial operating segment, or IOS, is between Merced and Bakersfield, with future phases that will extend the system to Silicon Valley and south to the LA basin. The selected consultant will complete design work on all of the physical components necessary for functional passenger rail service on day one of the initial operating segment. While the authority has environmentally cleared passenger facilities that can handle the ridership anticipated for the fullest extent of the system, or phase one, when high-speed rail operates between San Francisco and Los Angeles, the Central Valley stations will be built as building blocks. Station building blocks are scaled to the system phases and comprise the physical scope required for safe, comfortable passenger facilities in a given station to accommodate that operating phase. Building block 1 includes all of those elements required for the IOS, both landside and trackside, and represents the minimum necessary for a functional passenger rail station. These items include basic station elements within the fare-controlled area of the station or trackside, including a platform, canopy, as well as vertical circulation to enable access to and across the platforms, concourses, and finally, functional areas, including crew space. Building block 1 also includes landside components or physical elements on the wider station site that provide for logical, organized, and user-friendly access to the station. The selected designer will advance design for building block 1 for all 4 stations. Some elements will be constructed to a size that accommodates future ridership so that they do not have to be reconstructed later during revenue service. That means the selected designer will advance design through configuration footprint on items such as a station head house and additional access facilities for the purposes of future-proofing the building block 1 final design. The objective is to avoid rework, throwaway costs, and to further refine cost estimates. Next slide. In that vein, this designer will study the site for its potential to accommodate transit-oriented development over time. These studies, attuned with an estimate of programming based on allowable use, will be accompanied with district-scale sustainability utility studies. This is more than just a single building design project. We have large sites within which there are still undefined and unresolved access and circulation issues, including the locations and scale of future head houses and other TOD. As the site moves from the platform out to the surrounding community, this designer will be responsible for translating and adjusting the authority design vocabulary to something unique and appropriate to the local context. Next slide. I'd like to dig into contract terms, and we'll go to the next slide. While the firms will be qualified for the entire set of services, which maintains flexibility for the authority, the contract will be delivered in 2 separately funded notices to proceed. The first notice to proceed will not exceed $35.3 million and advances the design of the 4 stations to the configuration footprint in alignment with board funding authorized in December of 2021. Configuration footprint is a specific term to the authority. It defines the physical extent of the station footprint to serve as a baseline for any right-of-way acquisition beyond the ROD footprint, as well as utility requirements. It comprises the selection and refinement of materials for station components. And it constitutes at minimum 30% design on all station facilities, as well as additional work on select components of the station and station site. NTP1 includes important deliverables and tasks in addition to configuration footprint, including cost estimate updates, value engineering, building information modeling and asset management, sustainability, carbon and climate analyses, facilities programming, updated project risk assessments and schedule, site investigation, survey, and analysis. At the completion of NTP1, the authority will have the sole discretion to progress the design to final design and all that is necessary to make the building ready for customer service. NTP2 comprises that remaining work, including final design, bid support, construction support, and commissioning support, so that the station facilities at each station are ready for customers. The estimated amount for NTP2 is $36 million. Prior to exercising this option, of course, we'll return to our board and obtain approval. The timeline for these 2 NTPs and station delivery is currently synced with and planned to conform to the start of customer service at the end of this decade. One final word on the schedule. While the work follows a logical sequence, and while each station will be managed, designed, and documented as 4 separate design projects with standalone construction documents capable of being bid separately, we anticipate concurrent work across the stations in order to meet the schedule. Next slide. There are many pieces of the system underway as we progress the iOS and as our CFO, Brian Annis, illustrated. The consultant will integrate its work with design and construction activities by other authority contractors and consultants and comply with the authority's systems engineering management, verification, and validation requirements. We will be managing each NTP using task orders to conform the timing of the design contract with other pieces of work. For example, in Merced, this designer will begin detailed design work once a study is completed on a revised location that co-locates the high-speed rail facilities with those of the San Joaquin JPA, who runs the San Joaquin's Amtrak service, and ACE. This designer will also coordinate with the consultant selected for the LGA extension on station facilities that interface with a viaduct structure in Bakersfield. This designer will work also with our track and systems contractor, anticipated to be awarded later this year, on the alignment of the platforms and station tracks, as well as sequencing of construction in the station site. And this designer will receive work from the existing design build contractors that work in the Central Valley. This designer will refine that work for the station design. Next slide. This is a qualifications-based procurement, so the actual contract amount will be negotiated with the most qualified offerer. Firms will submit statements of qualifications to the authority, and the selection is based on a detailed evaluation of those submitted qualifications. The RFQ process will be managed by authority staff. The SOQ submitted by offerers will be reviewed to ensure that all technical requisite qualifications and other RFQ requirements are met. The SOQs will first be evaluated for pass-fail elements contained in the RFQ, among which is a pass-fail requirement related to the offerer's environmental, social, and governance efforts. These may include any environmental sustainability efforts, socioeconomic equity policies, and governance policies, or a report that conforms to sustainability frameworks identified in the RFQ. This contract, as my colleague provided details on, also includes small business, disadvantaged business, enterprise, and disabled veterans business enterprise utilization goals. Next slide. The authority has maintained a consistent, comprehensive approach to sustainability. The goal of the system is to not only serve as the backbone of electrified transportation in California, a critical component of achieving California's net zero future, but to be a model of sustainable infrastructure in delivery and operation. The stations are the most visible expression of the system and its sustainability intent. As with all California facilities, they have a very high performance design and climate resilient threshold to achieve. These will be zero net energy, LEED platinum facilities that can evolve into and function as sustainable districts. They will play a role in maintaining the authority's Envision Platinum rating. But above all, these must work well for our customers. They must be welcoming, user-friendly facilities that in their design also express the transformative and exciting aspect of high-speed rail. Next slide. I will end today detailing the procurement schedule. Next slide. The RFQ was advertised on Cal eProcure on April 29th. Today, of course, is the pre-bid conference. The statement of qualifications are due to the authority on July 19th. The anticipated notice of proposed award will be released in August of 2022, hopefully August 8th. We will have a presentation to the board on contract award currently scheduled for October of 2022. And then contract execution and notice proceed is also scheduled for October. This concludes my presentation.
Okay, Mo, can you go to the next slide? I think we have some more resources that we wanted to share. That's a visual image of our webpage that we talked about earlier. You can email questions to capital procurement at hsr.ca.gov and get your answers there. The station design webpage can be found very easily if you go to business, you go to our homepage, hsr.ca.gov, select business opportunities, and then select contractors. And that's where you'll also find this PowerPoint and the video of the presentation and the registrant list, like I mentioned. Okay, let's go to the next slide. I think we were introducing Lisa Crowfoot. All right.
Thank you very much for the prior presentations. Thank you, Alice. My name is Lisa Crowfoot, and I'm with the in-house legal counsel for the authority. And I'm just going to give a brief overview regarding our conflict of interest policy, which there is a link to in your RFQ package. And as you will see, if there are any questions or if you're in need of a review regarding a potential conflict or issue, please reach out to the information provided both in your RFQ package and provided today in this PowerPoint. Next slide, please, Mo. The organizational conflict of interest policy of the authority is defined as a circumstance arising out of the contractor's existing or past business or financial interests, familial relationships, contractual relationships, and organizational structure, such as parent entities or subsidiaries. And the focus is any issues that would result in impairment or potential impairment of the ability to render impartial assistance or advice to the authority, unfair competitive advantage, or a perception or appearance of impropriety, regardless of whether such perception is accurate. Next slide. The Supreme Court has given context regarding sort of the conflict of interest issues. And it's not that, not only does it look at dishonor, but also the conduct that tempts dishonor. So it's not that we're concerned about anyone acting honorably or acting appropriately. It's that we don't want to have anyone in a position to be tempted or have a potential to have an issue or a conflict. The authority's policy fulfills both its federal and state grant agreements and obligations. It complies with both federal and state law, and it ensures a fair and transparent procurement process and maximizes competition. So not only does it protect the authority, but it also protects the process to ensure that all of businesses that are interested in working on our project have a fair process to compete within. Next slide, please. So the key issues that we look for an organizational conflict of interest is whether a contractor has an unfair competitive advantage. And the standard sort of example there is if we've retained a contractor to act as our procurement contractor who helps us put together the procurement documents that you're all absorbing right now. And then that same contractor were to bid within the process, that would be an unfair competitive advantage. Another issue is if there's any issues regarding the contractor's objectivity, and that they could be compromised in terms of the advice that they're giving to the authority. So the standard sort of example there is if a contractor has contract A and it puts them in the position to oversee its own work on contract B that it also might have on the project. So that's kind of the standard issue that we see pretty frequently. Next slide. The policy is built with a lot of flexibility in it. The authority recognizes that we've got goals that need to be balanced against, making sure that we're not unnecessarily restricting the pool of potential proposers. And so we work very hard to try to work around any potential conflicts that might exist. Our policy requires consideration of lots of different factors, and of course, they're fact-specific for every issue. And it also requires that we look for mitigation and safeguards that we can put into place that would allow a contractor to participate in the process. Generally speaking, contractors aren't conflicted out of a procurement simply because they've done work on the project previously, or even if they're doing work on the project now. So I know that sometimes that's a perception, but that is not correct. In fact, we have many contractors who have several contracts with the authority, both successively and concurrently. Next slide. So how to request a determination if you have a concern. First, I encourage you to link to our policy, look through the policy and see if it applies to you. If you do request a written determination, you can go through the information that's on this slide, legal at hsr.ca.gov and request a determination. And what we'll do is we'll ask you for some facts and some information to support that request, and then we'll give you a written determination that indicates which portion of the policy applies to your determination. And next slide. I think that's it for the conflict of interest policy. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Lisa. Yep, just as promised, we're going to repeat some information here so you can get access to all the online resources. We do have the design services for Central Valley Station's webpage. The address is listed there. Again, super easy to find from our homepage, business opportunities, and then just select design services for Central Valley Stations. Again, we'll include this PowerPoint, the video, and the event registration list. We'll also have a link to the California State Contracts Register event webpage. And there you will find responses to questions and any RFQ updates. You can submit questions about the procurement to capitalprocurement@hsr.ca.gov, and those questions are going to be due by May 19th. All right, next slide. I believe it's our last one. Again, listing there all of the email addresses. I won't say them again because we've said them so many, but they're listed right there. And just a reminder that the Small Business Informational Workshop will begin at 1 o'clock via this same Zoom link. Okay, I think that's going to conclude our program for today. Thank you for joining us.
So good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Ashley Missler. I am High Speed Rail's small business advocate, and I oversee the small business program. My contact information is listed below, and at the end of the workshop, I will provide our contact information for myself and all the presenters in the chat. Next slide, please. Oh, I think we lost the slide there. No worries. So we have a kind of a full agenda pack. So basically today how it will run is I will present, and then we'll have a presentation from DGS, followed by a presentation from Caltrans, and then a presentation from our small business compliance team. So as this slide depicts, we are going to begin with a brief overview of the small business program. And as some of you may or may not have attended the first portion of the pre-bid, I will do a high level of the slides from the previous presentation. And then DGS will present on state certifications, followed by Caltrans, who will present on federal certifications. And lastly, we'll hear from our compliance team. And at the end of the workshop, we'll have time for question and answers. So the authority has a 30% overall small business goal. That includes a 10% goal for disadvantaged business enterprises and a 3% goal for disabled veteran business enterprises. We have a good number of businesses that are already performing on the project who come from all over the state, as you'll see depicted on this map. So in order for you to meet your goal, you're going to work with my team and your designated small business officer. As I mentioned in the previous meeting, it's very important for you to follow protocol for adding a designated small business officer to your project, and that you're using small businesses that have been approved to work on the project. If you're looking for more businesses to do work on the project, I do recommend that you leverage my team, and we'll be happy to partner with you to do workshops and try to help you find qualified businesses to perform on the project. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, HSR is not a certifying agency. We do partner with a couple different agencies to utilize their designations, as you'll see listed on this slide. I'll let DGS and Department of Transportation go into more details on the certifications. I would just like to add that anytime you bring a business on board, they do need to be certified with these departments, and their certifications must be current and valid the entire duration of the contract. Next slide, please. So this slide just discusses exclusivity, and I do want to mention that there's no prohibition against subconsultants or subcontractors being exclusive to one offer. However, we strongly discourage against it here at High Speed Rail for small businesses, DBEs, DBBEs that are subconsultants or subcontractors. Next slide, please. Okay, so this basically, this slide here discusses our own vendor registry. It's called Connect HSR. It's free, it's online, it's simple to complete, and we highly encourage all businesses to register here. Once you and your partnering businesses register, you'll be notified on all contract opportunities and workshops for the project. There's so many opportunities to bring your businesses on the project and to learn about HSR, how we do business, as well as like industry information. And that's all going to be listed on this site. So again, please make sure to register on Connect HSR. Next slide, please. Oh, that concludes my brief overview. I'll go ahead and pass to Wayne Gross from DGS, and he will discuss on DGS certifications.
Thank you, Ashley. Next slide, please. My name's Wayne Gross. I'm a business outreach liaison with the Department of General Services, the outreach branch. And I've been doing it for 14 years, so I think I've done this in my sleep a few times. So we have 3 state certifications: small business for the purpose of public works, and disabled veteran business enterprise. And I'm going to call it DVBE from now on. Next slide. Back in the 70s, we had an expression that was called KISS, keep it simple, stupid. And that is our mantra for you to get certified. We have 5 requirements. The first one is you must be independently owned and operated. You can't be dominant in the field of operation. What that means is there's competition out there. Must have its principal office located in California, and the owners or officers must be domiciled here in California. This is a California program. We don't want the riffraff from Arizona or Oregon coming in. This is your program, people. Next slide. And together with affiliates, you either have to have a business with 100 or fewer employees and gross annual receipts of 15 million or less averaged over the last 3 tax years. And if you happen to be a manufacturer, it's 100 or fewer employees. There is no gross annual receipts requirement. And we have an automatic certification when you do apply that if you make 5 million or less, you automatically get the subtitle of micro business, and that is used on the local level. Next slide. 2 years ago, we started a new program. It's for public works. And the first 4 requirements are the same: independently owned and operated. There has to be competition in what you do, and everyone is dealing here in California. The main requirement of 200 or fewer employees and annual gross receipts of 336 million or less over the last 3 tax years. If you're a manufacturer, you have to meet both the 200 employees and the gross annual receipts. Now, if you are already doing public work construction within the state, and you're small, okay, you don't have to get this large one for public works. We tell people if you stay in the small category, in other words, the 100 or fewer employees and the 15 million, keep that. It's only when you start getting near, over those 2 numbers that you'd want to get the public works certification. Next slide. For DVBEs, you have to be at least 10% service disabled. You have to own at least 51% of the company. And if you're a limited liability company, you all must be wholly owned by all of the disabled veterans. Next slide. And here's the big one. You have to be involved in the daily business operations and manage and control your business. And home office here has to be located in the United States, and the DVBE or DVBEs all must reside in California. Next slide. So this is our website, www.caleprocure.ca.gov. If this is the first time you're going to this site, I highly recommend that you make it a favorite. That way you never have to keep typing in www.caleprocure.ca.gov. On the top right, it says login register, and you click that. Next slide. And on this registration, at the very bottom left, it says to get registered as a bidder. So we click that. Next slide. And this is page 1 of 5 to get registered. Here again, it's the KISS principle in its practicality. Here on the first page, you either put in a federal employer ID number or a social security number, and you tell us your company name, and if you have a website, you can add it. And there are 4 other pages. Next slide. And you get a congratulations, and you are assigned a temporary password. And so when you log in again, and after you put in your temporary password, the system automatically says that password has expired. It forces you into putting in your own personal password. It has to be a minimum of at least 8 digits, 1 uppercase, 1 lowercase, 1 number, and 1 special key. Once you get registered, then you can get certified. Next slide. And the certification is good for 2 years. And as Ashley said, you have to stay current through the whole project. So 90 days prior to your expiration date, the system generates a reminder for you. So please make sure that you maintain that certification. And here, when you log in, it has here, get certified. And so you'd click that button. Next slide. And then it tells you to click this blue button in the middle. And it gives you an overview of the basic stuff that we're going to be needing from you. Next slide. And here are the 5 choices how you can get certified. If you are a disabled veteran and you qualify for the small business certification, get them both, and you can check both of them at the same time. What happens is, generally speaking, 90% of the time when you hit submit on your application, you do get the congratulations. If you are going for multiple certifications, the small business, like I said, you'll get congratulations, but I know for a fact that with the Dvbe, we need to review it. For example, the proof that you have at least a 10% disability, and so you obviously attach your letter of entitlement to that. Next slide. The CSCR, which is our is where we house our solicitations. State agencies post their solicitations here. You can find these opportunities. As a supplier, you can place an ad for free. Next slide. So here again, we are on the home page, and right in the middle, it has do a search. You click that button and it will take you to the search engine. Next slide. And there are 3 ways that you can do a search. You can do it by event description, okay? Keywords. You can do it if you happen to know the identification for that solicitation, or you can do it by department. And you'll see to the left, there are 3 bars. And when you click it, it will take you to a list of all of the departments. And if you're looking for Caltrans, you'll look forever and ever and ever, because it's listed as Department of Transportation. The same way with CalVet, it's Department of Veterans Affairs. So, next slide. You can also do an advanced search on our United Nations Specialty Product Specialty Codes. You can do it by service areas, those are the counties, or you can do it by contract license type. Next slide. So this is what a solicitation looks like. There are 3 columns at the top. The far left tells you when it was loaded into our system. It gives you a general description. so that it, do you really want to look at this solicitation or don't you? And just remember, make sure that you are logged in before you look at any of these solicitations. If you're not logged in, there's some things that won't appear. In the middle is the stop time and date. And in this case, it is a February date and exactly 2 o'clock. So if your quote arrives a minute late, you just lost out on an opportunity. And I like to tell people this: if for some reason you can't be there, to actually, hand over your quote, you get permission from the administrator to use a fax. Just remember this: it's 5 minutes to 2, and you hit the start button, and the fax ends at 2 minutes after. Okay, that is no good. Okay, it's not when the fax starts; it's when it ends. So kind of remember that kind of thing. On the far right, you have all of the documentation that explains everything you need to know about the solicitation. You can view ads, you can post an ad, and you have the contact information. Here again, 99% of the advocates do not, I repeat, do not give their phone numbers, and that's for your protection. And what I mean by that is, I'll give you an example. I open this solicitation, I find there's an error. So I email the administrator and say, hey, there's a problem. Here's what I found. And they type back, say, you're absolutely right. We're going to change it. Well, they don't. Okay. They just keep on going and they award it to someone. Anyway, so I protest it, and we're in front of a judge, and the judge says, do you have documentation for all these proceedings? And I go, oh, you mean these emails, sir? And he reads them and he goes, you're absolutely right, Mr. Gross. So the whole point being is it has to be in writing. So an email. Phone calls don't mean anything. There's no proof. Okay. The next thing is the, can you go back one? I missed one thing. And Caltrans would definitely be upset if I didn't mention this. They are the kings and queens of the mandatory pre-briefs. I bring this to your attention because Caltrans usually has mandatory pre-briefs. That means that if you're a prime, you have to show up and you have to sign in on a document. And so, and you have to send someone who knows what's going on about that solicitation. And so after Caltrans does their presentation, they tell all of the primes to go to their respective tables. And then you can go and introduce yourself, tell them what you can do for that solicitation, give them your capability statement, that's a resume. And hopefully you can do business if that contractor gets awarded the contract. Next slide. One of the ways that we buy is what we call the small business DVBE option. It's for goods and services and IT goods and services from $5,000 and a penny up to $250,000 minus a penny, and public works $5,000 and a penny up to $388,000. The buyer has to go in and get at least 2 small businesses or 2 DVBEs. You can't mix the certifications, but if you're a DVBE and are certified small business, you're in both arenas. Okay, next slide. And so it's important that you know who the advocates are. That's who you want to talk to. Next slide. And so if you go to Cali Procure, scroll down to the 4 boxes, and the bottom right says find training and resources. Next slide. Under research and marketing, the second bullet is the advocate list. You click that. Next slide. Then you click download the advocate directory. Next slide. And then you have the advocate list. Okay. And if you are in construction, column C is the only thing that you worry about. Any agency with an X in it, those are the only people you need to talk to. And you will notice that on this slide, there are 3 agencies that are highlighted in yellow. I talked about the small business DVBE option. Well, 6 years ago, our director said that the option was a bunch of bunk. And he said, we have people like me going out into the field and trying to lure small businesses and DVBEs to get certified. And so our director said, then BGS should come to you first, the people in the database. So we created the first policy. And it's basically the same as the small business DVBE as far as the numbers, but the buyers at DGS must come to you in the database first. And there are 18 agencies and they're highlighted on the advocate list. Next slide. That completes my briefing. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, Wayne. And now on to a presentation from Jennifer at Department of Transportation.
Hello, thank you everyone for joining today. My name is Jennifer Baker. I'll be reporting out for Aisha Copeland. And I am a certification analyst from Caltrans, Department of Civil Rights. So let's get started with the first slide. The learning objectives for this presentation would be to do a program overview for disadvantaged business enterprise, which will be also called DBE from here on out. We'll talk about the benefits of certification, the eligibility requirements of certification, and the frequently asked questions and resources. And I'll put some links in the chat when we're done. Next slide, please. So the disadvantaged business enterprise DBE consists of a for-profit small business concern where socially and economically disadvantaged individuals own at least a 51% interest, as well as control, management, and daily business operations. It doesn't have to be one person that's 51%. It can be a multiple number of people that make up 51%, which is the called collectively the primary owners. If it is one person, that's totally fine too, but it can be more than just one. Next slide, please. Okay, so a legislatively mandated program implemented by the states as a condition of receiving federal funds via the Federal Highway Administration, FHWA, and Federal Transportation Administration, FTA, who oversees the program for their respective areas. Next slide, please. So the objectives for DBE. So first of all, the DBE, for that, we want to ensure non-discrimination in the award and administration process. Hang on a second, move my thing down. Okay, here we go. So we ensure non-discrimination in the award and administration of the United States Department of Transportation assisted contracts, USDOT. It's also to create a level playing field on which DBEs can compete fairly. We also ensure that the department's DBE program is narrowly tailored in accordance with applicable law. And lastly, we ensure that the firms meet eligibility standards in the Code of Federal Regulations 49 CFR Part 26. Next slide. So talking about the benefits of Dbe certification, the certification from Caltrans is recognized by sub-recipient local agencies in California. It expands opportunities to participate on federally funded contracts. You can become accessible to prime contractors needing to fulfill Dbe participation goal requirements. You'll be listed in the official CUCP database, and having a Dbe increases opportunities to network at events such as procurement fairs and pre-bids. Next slide, please. So for the CUCP, next slide. So the CUCP, as mandated by the United States Department of Transportation, USDOT, California's Unified Certification Program is an agreement between multiple certifying agencies. So what that means is there are several certifying agencies in California. Caltrans is not the only one. Although we handle the whole state of California, there are other certifying agencies within California. Fresno, the city of Fresno is one. Los Angeles Metro is another. City of Los Angeles is another, and there's quite a few more. The CUC, and so collectively we are known as the CUCP. The CUCP provides a public database to find DBEs. You can also view competitors' profile information. So if someone is certified with City of Fresno, that database will locate not just Caltrans, but other certifying agencies' information. And just so you know, you cannot be certified in more than one, with more than one agency. If you're certified with Caltrans, you do not need to be certified with City of Fresno or City of LA. It's all recognized. It's a one deal, one shop deal. Next slide. So here are the other certifying agencies, as I was mentioning. We are at the top, Caltrans, Bay Area Rapid Transit for BART, City of Fresno, City of Los Angeles County Metropolitan Transportation Authority, San Francisco Municipal Transportation Agency, San Mateo County Transit District, San Diego County Regional Airport Authority, San Francisco International Airport, and finally, Santa Clara Valley Transportation Authority. So aside from Caltrans, all these other agencies, certifying agencies, generally just take firms that are located in that immediate area. If they're not within that immediate area, they send them to us. And we take everybody that doesn't fit into any of those other locations. Next slide. Okay, now we're going to be talking about Dbe eligibility requirements. Next slide. So in this overview for Dbe eligibility, you must have social and economic disadvantage. You must have ownership of the firm. You must have control of the firm. The firm must be independent. And the primary owners making up 51% or more have to have a personal net worth under 1.32 million. And the business size standard also needs to meet a quota, a criteria rather. Next slide. So in these sections of social and economic disadvantage, if you fit into the ethnicity of Asian Pacific, African American, Hispanic, Native American, subcontinent Asian, or a woman, you have social and economic disadvantage. If you do not fit into any of these groups, you are not presumpted to be socially and economically disadvantaged. You may still apply for DBE. We don't turn anyone down from applying for DBE, but you will need to refer to 49 CFR Part 26, Appendix E, and there is a lengthy, how can I put it, description. You need to write a description of how you feel you have been discriminated against and how you meet social and economic disadvantaged. Next slide. Okay, so for an owner of a DBE, the firm must be at least 51% or more owned by socially and economically disadvantaged individuals from those groups that we were talking about on the slide before. And like I said earlier, it can be 100% owner that has Hispanic or African American or Asian subcontinent, anyone that make up, or 100% woman owned. Or it can be a combination of any of the socially and economically disadvantaged individuals. Next slide, please. Okay, so for control, the majority owners, which make up the 51%, must be able to have the ability and power to make decisions on management, policy, and operations. They have to understand what the firm does. Sometimes owners get put into position from someone that owned it prior, and that person needs to be able to understand what the firm does and make decisions. And depending on how the firm is structured, whether it's an LLC or a corporation, if it's a corporation, they must be in the bylaws. They have to have the power to make decisions within the bylaws. We can talk about that later if anyone has any questions for that. And next slide. Okay, so only an independent business may be certified as a DBE. So what that means is if you have a newly formed firm and they need help getting financial backing from someone that is maybe not a socially and economically disadvantaged individual, or if they are, they're relying on someone else for help. That's not an independent firm. An independent firm is someone that can stand on their own and make their own money, and they don't need any help from an outside entity, whether or not they're a DBE. Next slide. Okay, so for the personal net worth, the 51% majority owner or owners must not exceed a personal net worth of 1.32 million each. Each person, not collectively, each person must not exceed the P&W of 1.32 million. So let's take a husband and wife firm. It's 50-50, although collectively they make up 100% socially and economically disadvantaged individuals. They both will, if they're both involved in the firm, they each have to send in a personal net worth. So in that respect, they can each go up to being worth 1.32 million or below. They would still be able to qualify. Next slide. And the 3-year average gross receipts cannot exceed our new standard of 28.48 million. When that says varies by industry, that means that it varies by construction, trucking, engineering, things like that may have lower standards depending on the NAICS code. So also, if there's questions about that, we can talk about that later as well. Next slide. Applying for Dbe certification. Let's get into talking about that. Next slide. Oh, I will put the link of where to go to apply for Dbe certification at the end of the program. An application is assigned to a certification analyst. This is after you go into the Dbe portal and submit your application. So this is on our side. And I am a certification analyst, and this is actually how what my job entails. So an application is assigned to me, a certification analyst. Then the analyst conducts a review of all the paperwork that you filed with the application. And we review it for missing documentation. And if there is anything missing, we send it through the Dbe portal and request that you send that to us within 30 days. So that would be if we need further clarification, like if you didn't include a tax return, or maybe your personal net worth wasn't notarized, which is a need. If you don't do that, it will get returned to you, just so you know. And then once we have everything, once we have every document needed, it's 90-day turnaround time from that time on. So we schedule a site visit, a virtual site visit with the firm owner, the 51% owner or owners. We schedule the site visit with them, and we conduct it via the web. And then after that, it's still an internal review. We conduct the final review for eligibility recommendation, whether it's an approval or a denial. And then once we hand it off to electronically off to our management, the certification determination is completed and approved or denied, and we notify the firm over an email. Hey, here's our determination. Go ahead and take a look on your portal and you'll find your letter. Next slide. Okay, yeah, this is what I'm going to put in the chat. So you start at the Caltrans website, https://dot.ca.gov. Then click on programs. Actually, this is the long way. I will also put our new portal address in the chat, because it seems that these slides are prior to when we received our new B2G Now system, Dbe Portal. So let's just go along with this old search, how you search for a Dbe firm. And it's actually still up. There's just two different ways of searching. So to search for a Dbe firm, you start at this website, then click programs, and then you click on civil rights. And then after that, you click on California Unified Certification Program. And then you click on find a certifying agency for anyone that needs to search for Dbe firms. Go ahead and next slide. And then you click on show details. And then click on California Department of Transportation. Okay. I apologize. This is my first time doing this presentation. So, okay. So actually, number 5 is taking you into the new Dbe portal, which is under the, it's called B2G Now. A lot of other certifying agencies use it. So we are finally on board with that system. So once you click on number 5, you'll be taken automatically to the B2G Now website. And this is how you apply for Dbe certification. So if your firm is located in the Northern California area, that means that you'll be directed to our Caltrans agency to be certified with Caltrans. So then you click on our name, and then you click on apply for certification. And that takes you to another pop-up that you create your own account. If you have not been in this system before, this is when you create your account. Next slide. So to find your information or set a new profile, you put in your tax ID number, your business information, your contact information, and company contact person. So that will mean that the company contact person will be able to get into the B2G Now system and upload documents on the firm's behalf. Next slide. So like I was saying earlier, the application is completed 90 days after we have all of the information, and a certification analyst will reach out to the firm to let them know, okay, we have all the information, your 90 days starts from this time. The next thing we need to do now is your on-site. So we'll schedule that. So, or if they still need information to make it a complete package, then they will tell the firm. So the DBE application and the personal net worth must be notarized and signed by the majority owner or owners. If it's not, it will be returned electronically. So anything else aside from the application needs to be uploaded, like tax return documents, bylaws, articles of corporation, anything like that needs to be uploaded from your computer. And the direct link access to the system is the one that I will also put in the chat, https://caltrans.dbesystem.com. And next slide. And now it's time for frequently asked questions. If anyone has any, I'm open to whatever you want to throw at me. Is there a fee for applying? No, the only cost associated with the Dbe certification is to notarize your application on your own, like through your bank, or I think maybe like a Office Depot or something might be able to do it as well, a notary or something. And P&W statement must be notarized as well. So can I mail my application? No, it will be sent back to you if you mail it into our office. The applications are to be submitted online at the caltrans.dbesystem.com.
Jennifer, real quick, I'm sorry to interrupt. We're going to
Sure.
hold all questions till the end. We have one more presentation, and then we'll have everyone kind of come in and answer collectively.
Gotcha.
So sorry
Okay.
about that.
No, that's okay.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Sure. And then how long does it take to get a response after I submit my application? After we receive all complete and necessary paperwork, it can take up to a month. But I actually believe that if we need additional documentation, we won't wait a month to tell you. We'll be telling you within the first week after we get the application, because we need to tell you what we need. So you'll know the first week if we need more information or if we have enough information to go forward with the on-site. And we don't do the on-site, we don't conduct that until we have all of the documents completed to make a full package. Okay, that is it for Caltrans DBE certification. So I will turn it back to, okay. The specific resources, the certification analyst of the day, which is me today, Every day it's someone different, Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. We don't answer the phone between 12 and 1, which is lunchtime, but we will get back to you if you leave a message. Call us at 916-324-1700. And our email, dbe.certification@dot.ca.gov. Please do not mail applications to that email address. They will be sent back to you to request to use the portal instead. And there is our DBE program website info, as well as the federal program website, FHWA. Okay, I believe this concludes the presentation. Back to you, Ashley.
Great, thank you so much, Jennifer. That was awesome. Okay, now we'll move to Peggy from our compliance team. Peggy, go ahead.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Peggy Chiok, and I'm the project specialist assisting the small business compliance within the High Speed Rail Authority. My presentation is very short, so just bear with me. Typically for the compliance, you will not be needing to know a lot of it, only until if you get awarded the contract. But because we cover it so that you have an understanding of what is entailed in the whole compliance sector if you ever get awarded the contract. So this is just give you an overview of what is required if you are being awarded the contract. Just bear with me. My internet sometimes may get a little bit unstable. So if that happens, I'm going to shut off my camera. So just to let you know, so not because I want to be rude and not show my face. Okay. Next slide, please. Okay, so for the small business program, under the small business program for the authority, there are some responsibilities and reporting requirements that all selected primes being awarded the contract will need to follow through. I think Ashley has briefly touched on that before. And the first thing when you get awarded the contract, the first and foremost thing is to make sure that you designate a small business officer, and that person will have a lot of responsibility under that SBO, as we call it. Typically, a lot of what we have seen is a lot of people are double dutying on SBO and being an engineer or owner. My suggestion is try to separate that, because there is a lot of responsibility rest on being an SBO, that's a designated SBO for this program. So as an SBO, the person will need to confer and meet with the small business compliance analyst on the small business team, and in regards to all reporting items. And the person will also need to develop and implement and monitor the small business performance plans for your company, and manage and implement the approved plans that were submitted to the authority. On top of that, the SBO is also required to act as the lead contractor, or the lead person to the contractor staff and subcontractors, answering everything regarding small business program goals and objectives, and to constantly meet with your small business subcontractors and letting them know, making sure that they fully understand the authority's small business program, the reporting structures, reporting requirements, and all the other responsibilities and protections that comes along with it. Next slide, please. And on the quarterly or monthly, depending on how complicated your contract is, how big it is, or if you have a lot of issues regarding small businesses, the SBO will need to meet with the small business compliance team, like I say, either on a quarterly or monthly, depending on the level or intensity of small business issues that you have, and also work with the compliance team to make sure that your team, your company is meeting the overall small business utilization goal. And if there's any strategies that need to be achieved or discussed with the compliance team to make sure that these goals are met. On top of that, the SBO is required to attend at least 2 business advisory council meetings per year. The authority do have 4 business advisory council a year, and so the requirement is to at least attend 2 of them. On top of that, one of the other thing that SBO needs to be in charge of is to make sure that on the Primes Consultants website to list all the small business participating on the contract review. This is for transparency, so that other people who wants to know who are the small businesses that is working under your contract, they can and have the means to go to your website and see who are the small businesses participating on the contract review on the High Speed Rail Authorities program. At the same time, the SBO is supposed to perform ongoing efforts to engage other small businesses to meet the 30% utilization goal. Anytime any small businesses fall out from the contract, it needs to be replaced. So constantly the SBO will need to put on ongoing efforts. If not, then there is then you will need to show what is your good faith efforts in meeting these goals. Next slide, please. So on top of all these responsibilities, part of the responsibilities are the reports and submissions that the SBO needs to undertake. So every 15th of the month, the SBO will need to submit a Form 103, which is the SB Utilization Verification Form, a Prompt Payment Verification Form, and the monthly SB Narrative Reports to the Small Business Compliance Team. This is where we gather all the information, tally up all the numbers to make sure that it meets everything needs to meet and be verified with, to make sure that what you're reporting that you're paying to the small businesses is what is actually set and presented on the prompt payment verification form. So all these forms needs to be submitted to the team by the 15th of each month. And every year there is an annual report due 1st of August. This is so that we know you kind of recap what has been going on for the last year and address what are some of the concerns moving forward and what are some of the strategies and goals that you have to implement moving forward to meet your small business goals. This is a requirement that this report be submitted the 1st of August of each year. At the same time, when you have small businesses on board your contract, the small business officer is supposed to submit all executed agreements to us. This is our way of making sure and verifying that whatever it is stated on the agreement on the scope of work, these small businesses have the right codes and right they are eligible to do the job as what they say they're supposed to be doing. If there's any change in contract amount, assign change task orders, verifying the approved change order needs to be submitted to us, so we know what is the actual amount, what are the change orders amount, so that it can be added onto the total contract value when we calculate the utilization goal. And on top of that, after you get awarded the contract, down the road, if you wish to add on any small business contractor, we encourage you to add more of the small businesses, but at the same time, when you add them on, you have to submit what we call the request to add, and together with it, you have to also submit the executed agreements and the small business certifications to the small business compliance team. They are the ones who review and verify to make sure that everything is in order, the small businesses are eligible with the right status, the right certifications, and then they will be given you will be given as a prime, you'll be given the SB credit that is going to be applied towards your small business goal. Next slide. I think that's the end of my presentation, I believe. So I will hand it back to Ashley, and if you have any questions, you may ask at that time.
Thank you, Peggy, and thank you to DGS, Department of Transportation, for all the excellent presentations. So this concludes all of our portions of the presentation of the workshop. Now we're going to open for a question and answer session. If you don't have any questions, feel free to sign off. Our team's going to remain here until 2:30 p.m. But if you do have questions that do not pertain to small businesses, certifications, or compliance, they'll need to be sent to capitalprocurement@hsr.ca.gov. Unfortunately, we won't be able to answer any specific questions or requests related to procurements. Those have to be posted online, and those will be posted online for after the questions that the due dates for the questions, which I believe is the 19th, Thursday, May 19th. Our procurement team is going to provide a written response to all inquiries. So right now, we'll go ahead and open the floor to any questions.
Members of the public, prior to beginning the Q&A session, I just want to go over some important technical aspects for offering your question. For viewers who wish to offer their question verbally via Zoom, please utilize the raise your hand feature, which is located at the bottom of your screen, so that we may call on you that the order that your hand was raised in. And I don't see anybody joining in by phone, so I don't have to repeat those instructions.
Okay, thank you, Mo. I do see that there's one question in the chat, and I'll go ahead and answer that now. The question is, how can we reach out to Primes for this project? And basically how this will work is once this presentation and workshop ends, our HSR media team is going to make sure that everything is ADA compliant, and then all that information is going to be posted on our page under the procurement that's related to this event, the Central Valley Stations. And it'll have the presentations, any documents related to the solicitation, as well as a list of attendees. It'll list what their business type is and how it'll be identified. So what I do recommend is that you use that list and reach out to those that you have interest in partnering with, and just be mindful of the certain certification types that they have. Another question came in, will be sent the presentation slides via email? No. All that information, like I said, is going to be posted onto our website where the procurement is. Like we have another question similar to the other two that were asked. Will the slide decks be sent to us? No, they will not. Those are going to be posted onto our website shortly after the event. I believe they're in the process of remediating all the documents, making them ADA compliant as we speak. I see a question in here from Andrea Kincaid, and the question is, if I begin the small business certification process now, will I be eligible soon enough for these contracts? And I will let Wayne take that question because he will be able to answer specifics on the time frame.
Generally speaking, 90% of our applications, when you hit submit, you get congratulations. It's that quick. So just make sure that you attach all the required documentation.
Looks like we have a question in the chat, and that's where on the website do we find the presentation slides? I did post in the chat the link to where the slides will be. They're not up as of yet, but once they are remediated and made compliant, they will be posted on that link. I'll go ahead and type that in here as well. Hi, I see another question came in, and the link that I provided does takes me to contracts out for bid. These slides are there. No, they are not there. As I mentioned, right now we're in the process of making them ADA compliant and remediating them. And also we have to finish today's presentation and workshop before they can be posted. So that is where you will go to find all documents related to both the events today. Time is now 2:15. We have 15 minutes remaining. We are here to answer any questions that you have. Please use the raise your hand feature or type your question into the chat function of the Zoom link. Thank you. We have 1 minute remaining. I want to thank everyone for attending today and all of our participants. Again, if you have any questions, please use the link and the resources from HSR's website to post your questions or send an email. Thank you.
Thank you, Ashley.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you, Ashley.
Bye, Wayne. Thank you so much. Have a great day, guys.
You
Okay,
too.
you too.
Thank you, everybody, for joining, and we'll be ending this webinar.